We are kicking off episode 23 of Industrial Marketing Live this afternoon, wherever you're at. I'm Peyton Warren here at Gorilla 76, and I will be moderating today. We just some housekeeping. If it's your first time to come to Industrial Marketing Live, we love the chat. This conversation, this group is meant to be one of collaboration, one of workshopping. We want to hear from you. We want to hear your questions. We want you to join us in conversation if you're comfortable. Let's talk about what challenges that you're encountering, and let's workshop them here together. So today we are going to be talking with, the topic is video, and we're going to be talking with some subject matter experts from Gorilla 76. So we've got the one, the only Nick Tacony, our videographer here, and he can give you guys a little wave. We've also got Aaron Weeks. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, Aaron, but our film school dropout.
I'll repeat it.
Okay. And then Matt and Mary will also be chiming in here to give us their thoughts on video, how you do it, why you need it, and how to do it well. But before we jump into the topic, I want to just plant a little seed and get that chat rolling. We've been talking amongst ourselves. We've decided that we do want to kick off a community. We think we've got good folks here that could be collaborating in between these bi-weekly sessions. And so if you're interested in being part of like a Slack group where we would have all of the folks who are in Industrial Marketing Live just be able to communicate with each other. We'd share templates there, you know, the resources that we cover during these sessions, and you'll have just direct access to the folks we bring on as hosts. So if you're interested in that and you want to be invited to the group later this week, go ahead and just put in the chat like an exclamation point or a thumbs up, and I will make sure that you get invited. But I always say this, without further ado, I'm ready to jump in. This is a great topic. We've got great experts. So Aaron, video is a huge part of everyday life, and that doesn't change just because we're at work. So to get us started today, can you tell us a little bit more about why video is important? Why are we even talking about it today? Why do we think this is worthy of an Industrial Marketing Live session?
Gladly. So to kind of start, something Peyton alluded to is I did go to film school. I did not complete it, but what I did is take those skills and apply that to my job in in-house marketing when I was at Caterpillar, and also my last 6 years at the agency world. But why I wanted like Nick and I to do this today is because we've filmed a couple videos over the last couple of years. We've talked about a lot. In fact, we spent 14 hours in the car together one time on a video shoot. And I want to kind of share that expertise with everyone because I think everyone gets the why. We're all here on a video call right now. Like we all get the why. The hardest thing is the how. How do I get it started? But before we get to the how, I do want to repeat why it does matter so you can articulate it to someone else. Because this is going to be the question you get from your team, or if you have a director or someone that's not quite getting like why we need to start it. Here's kind of my 3 points. Number one, our customers want it. At Gorilla, we do voice of customer interviews for almost all our clients. Every single one will always say, can I get this piece of content in video? Now, it's our job as marketers to provide that value. So I think number one is always the customer. So let's give them the content that they need. Number two, I think this is more of the storyteller in me. We should like really strive to show and not tell. Video is the best format for that, right? Even better, let's go tell stories. Because if you tell stories through video, your customers are going to retell those stories to someone else. But again, if we just have written word content, that's great for the readers. What about the watchers? What about the storytellers? That's where video comes in. And I think number three, just to pack those 2 points together, as we all continue to evolve in marketing, video is the content our customers want. So let's give it to them, right? Let's stop straying away from it. In 5 years, TikTok is going to be the predominant platform for all B2B marketers to be on, right? We can start that process now. We can start learning how to get it done now. So before we kind of move on to Nick to throw some questions at him, I know Matt and Mary, you want to kind of throw your thoughts in?
Go for it, Mary.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, Aaron. I think especially the hot take at the end that TikTok might be the new B2B platform in the next like 1 to 3 years.
Yeah, I think I'll add my 2 cents on why we do video. I think one of the struggles of almost every B2B company and most companies that exist, and I think this is especially true in the industrial space, is it's very difficult in industrial to humanize yourself as a company. And video is one of the ways, the most effective mediums for doing that. I mean, part of the reason why we're doing this in a live format with our faces on the screen, with people like Craig, whose face is on the screen, is because we want to humanize ourselves for all of you and make sure you know us as people, because ultimately people want to work with people they like, they know, they trust, they feel like they have a relationship with. And so video is a way to help build relationships with people, even though you've never met them before. So I look at video like I look at podcasting, because it's audio, it's a different kind of multimedia, but it's still multimedia. And what you're doing with your words, just as much as your body language, is you're passively building relationships with people. People get a sense for who you are and what you stand for, and they get a sense for what you value, and also just how much do you know about what you're talking about. And so when I was at Binzel, one of the first things I wanted to do was get a video marketing program off the ground for the company, because we had such great individuals at that company who were so deeply expert in what they did in robotics and in welding and in lasers. And I wanted to make sure that they knew that how good we were at this. It wasn't like we were just sending stuff from these technical people in Germany that you were never going to meet. Like the people you were going to work with closely throughout this project, throughout this integration, throughout this demo, were people who knew the product and knew the industry and knew the practice, the engineering, the science of welding very well. And so I wanted video to help communicate that, help bridge that divide. And we were able to do that very well, doing product overviews and product demos. So I think about video, think of it mostly more than anything as like, hey, we need to humanize ourselves as a company and make sure that they get to know us not as Acme Corp, but as the people who comprise Acme Corp. And so I think that's one of the most compelling reasons to do video and to implement it and have as part of your overall content strategy and your marketing.
That's great.
Oh, yeah, I appreciate, and Matt and Mary, you kind of packaged what I said in your way too. And I love that. And I think, again, like our idea with this space here is like for this to be marketing therapy. Like right now we have a videographer in the room and like we can ask him literally anything. Nick and I are going to kind of go through a process right now of like what to think about pre-production, during production, post-production. But as we do that, like just throw your questions in. Like if you ever had a question about like what camera I need, throw that in there. Like that's the kind of the stuff we want to answer, because again, is when you have an hour with a videographer, right? That's what we're trying to do here. Peyton, were you about to say something?
No, I was just going to say, I know we'll come about this later, but I really like how Matt was talking about it. It's so important about how you make people feel, and video is just such a cool way to do that. And I know, Nick, that's something you brought up when we were preparing for this conversation of just like even vetting other videographers, right? Like how does their work make you feel? So anyway, we'll get to that, but yeah, Nick, thank goodness you're here, because we would be lost without you at Gorilla, and we would also hear everyone's just really interested to hear what you've got to say. So like, how do we get started in video? Like if you are wanting to do a project, you've got ideas, you want to use video in your company, where should you even begin?
Sure. Well,
Big
hey,
question.
everybody. It's a lot. But I think the big thing is to figure out, we were discussing this before we went live, but what's your goal? That's a really, really big question to ask at the beginning, because it kind of dictates how you're going to go about creating it. Because I mean, there's a lot of different ways to do, a video project, and different goals require different processes or lifts or skill sets. So like, I think figuring that out first and foremost of like, what do you want to tackle here? Are we telling somebody about our company, or are we telling somebody about our product? Are we telling them about a process that we have? Or are we doing a case study talking about our customer's process? Like, to figure that out is the most important thing, because once you figure that out, there's a million decisions that have to be made from the start of making a video to the end of making a video. And if you know what that goal is, you can always defer back to that. And as long as you are serving that original goal, you'll get something that's valuable for yourself. At least, I mean, I guess within reason. But yeah, so the big things that I like to tell people about once you identify that goal is figuring out, is it something that you can handle yourself, or is it something that you need outside help with? I'm not sure about everybody on this call's skill set, but I'm guessing that a lot of you don't have like video or production backgrounds, which is totally fine, because there are things that you can do, you know, with your current skill set that you can start implementing that are totally viable. Now, you understand that that won't look like Stranger Things or anything, you know, massive, but you can do something that's still really impactful. Because I think when you're working at that level, I think the thing that you have to hold on to is authenticity, which is kind of why I think people keep talking about TikTok and it being a big thing. I'm not on it, but I totally get the appeal of it. But when you think about TikTok, you're not looking at like really polished videos. You're looking at like, you know, boots on the ground perspective from people, whether that's somebody making a joke or somebody demoing a product or whatever it is. But I'll venture a guess that if you see a video on TikTok that looks like it was shot with a cinema camera and is like super well lit and stuff, I know when in those environments, when I'm expecting to see this candid perspective, when I see the really polished one, it puts up a guard for me. Like, it's a little bit of a red flag, and it says someone's trying to market to me right now. Somebody's trying to sell me on something instead of just give me what I'm here for, which is information, entertainment, what have you. So at that level of what can you do now, I think the important thing is to realize what the skill set that you're starting with is, and realize the value of that is you get to have a very authentic voice. You get to come at it from a very grounded perspective, and then lean into that. And then if you want to do something bigger, like maybe you want to do a brand film, or you want to do a commercial or something bigger like that, that's the time that you start bringing in more professional help. But I think the things to consider right now, if you're like standing at the starting line, trying to figure out where to begin, like if you have a project that you want to do, ask yourself, what's your goal? And then figure out what is your skill set, which way do we need to go to attack that goal?
Yeah, Nick, I'll jump in there. I think, you know, goal is a word we're going to continue to throw around a lot in these. And it's important because most of us are strategists on here. So we're trying to figure out the goal and execute on it. With video, it's very important, because what I don't want to do is send Nick, our videographer, in a situation where all of a sudden it's like he's got to capture everything, you know, because that's going to be a video project that's going to fail. So I saw like a lot of questions about like testimonials. Great. Figure out if that's the goal. That's what we want to capture. Now you can start to evaluate what Nick's saying is, can I do that in-house? Can I do that on Zoom like we're doing right now? Can I just go interview a client or a customer or subject matter expert over Zoom? If not, great, hire a videographer. You're going to get something that's exceptional, right? So I think that's kind of what Nick is really alluding to, is figure out what you want the subject to be, your goal to be. And then that focus will kind of derive of like, do I need a videographer? Do I need equipment? Can I do this myself? Adam, Mary, you got anything to add on that?
I don't have anything to add on that. There's a couple good questions here that I wanted to get to because I thought they were super relevant, and I definitely have thoughts on both of them.
Yeah, I was going to say, I want you guys to jump in on your tips for prepping for testimonials and like in-house interviews, because I know you guys had some good ones when we were discussing this earlier.
Yeah, go ahead. Peyton, do you want to bring Matt Park? Matt Park, do you want to come on and kind of question? I love to work through. Good.
Matt. Yeah, hey Matt, welcome to Industrial Marketing Live. Yeah, Matt, you had a great question about testimonials, capturing them, how to prepare for them, how to shoot them. I know Tyler's really interested too, so feel free to join us here, Tyler. But Matt, yeah, tell us, like, have you done testimonials before? Like, what's your current status with this project in your own?
I don't know. Perhaps like others in the industrial marketing space, we struggle with getting customers to identify themselves in our marketing collateral. But we're working through it. It starts with that sort of master services agreement and NDAs and everything contractually before we even get a chance to present maybe an opportunity to co-market something or to capture their opinion. But if, say, we are in a situation where we've got that approval in place, and we wanted, instead of just capturing a verbal descriptive of what they think about the product or service, if we got permission to go on site and film a conversation with them, how do you balance that between sort of scripted and sort of a natural conversation? Is there any sort of tips you have about how to set things up with that customer? Like, should you expect it to be like a half an hour free flowing conversation, and then you're extracting maybe a 20-second clip from that? Like, how do you put this together?
Yeah, I can go ahead. Nick.
No, go for it.
You start and I'll jump in.
Okay. Well, so that's a great question. We've kind of done it in a couple of different ways here. I'll tell you the way that I think is the best way to go about it, and then I'll give you the answer for how to do it if, situation is not as ideal. I think the best way to go about it is, let's say you get access to that person and the story. There's a reason you reached out to them in the first place. Here we go with the goal. Figure out what's the story you're trying to tell. Is it how this product impacted them? Is it the pain point they want to do? Figure out what that is. And then where we like to start is an outline. Just like you're writing a paper or maybe a blog post or what have you, but get your outline together. Give me a beginning, middle, and end. Give me the key differentiators. Figure out what those things are. That's how I do it. And then I can visualize, I get a sense of where it's going to be. And then once I have that outline, I turn that outline into questions. Like every point, I figure out what's the question that will elicit that response. And in my head, I kind of come up with, how would somebody say this? Obviously, I don't know what their voice is like. Oftentimes you never have spoken to the person. You don't know what they'll be like on the day, but you can guess what kind of soundbite you're looking for in your head. What does it feel like whenever they're answering this question or when they're giving this information? So I write my questions out that way. And figure out what gaps I have afterwards. I kind of obsess over that. I'll be pretty quick with the outline because that usually you kind of already have an idea for. I'll go through, spend more time writing the questions sometimes just to make sure I don't miss any piece or come up with a caveat question and be ready for them to either not have an answer or to not give you the answer that's super clear. So like sometimes I'll rephrase a question. If it's something very important, I'll make sure to bold that or write it in a different way a little later. So then whenever you get on the day when you're there filming, I ask the questions in an interview sense. I'm very conscientious not to make it a conversation because a lot of times in conversations, we have a lot of, they're not necessarily verbals, but they're more auditory like cues, the ahas, the that kind of stuff. You want to avoid doing that. I always like to let them finish their sentence before I follow up with a follow-up question. And that's actually kind of an interesting thing that happens with that, is that can be kind of awkward. When someone finishes talking, and then it takes them too long before anybody else will start talking, there's like this weird uncomfortable thing that sets in. And a lot of times what I have found is that people will start talking again because they think maybe I didn't give them all the information. And a lot of times they'll dig deeper onto whatever piece of information they maybe were withholding or they thought wasn't important or they didn't think was relevant, whatever. But so putting it that way, and a couple things that happens from that questions list, your outline's already the structure you want it to be in. When you write your questions that way, when you go into edit it, it's going to be in that order, right? Like, so you're kind of already, you've captured in the order that you want to do it. I'm here to tell you that it very, very rarely does it work completely start to, front to back like that. You're going to have to restructure some things. But those are the things that I have found to put it together in the best way possible. I'll also say that is a lot of time that maybe you don't necessarily have. So if you're talking about that approach, I would encourage to bring in a professional. If you've got the access to it and it's really that important, I would see about, if it's someone out of state, I would see about hiring a videographer in that area to film that interview for you, maybe, and get some B-roll to cover your edits, because that version is going to be very choppy because you got to chop out all your questions and you want that to play in a smoother fashion. But now we're adding more time and more production stuff. That's the way I think is the strongest way to do it. Now, the more accessible way, let's say we don't have a big budget, maybe we finally got access, we got to go, next Tuesday, I don't have enough time to pull a lot of things together. That more conversational piece would be probably how I would go about it. In terms of, I'd still do an outline, I'd still figure out what do you want to get, and I would still come up with the questions, and I would still try to not step on their answers, but also know that, you're not going to be cutting together this big long piece. Maybe you're going to break it out. Maybe it breaks out into little pieces better. Or you can just take your interview, and instead of covering it with pretty engaging B-roll that's, real visually appealing, you just do a title card, and maybe it's a case study that do, question, answer from the horse's mouth, question, answer from the horse's mouth. I mean, because at the end of the day, you figure out your goal, and then there's varying degrees that you can get of it. When you're trying to give that information, like for instance, in a case study, somebody just wants to hear someone else's opinion. They just want someone else to tell them that what they're thinking is the right thing, right? Can we compare notes so that it's right? So there's strength in that authenticity. I'm not trying to get another response. That was me actually finished talking.
Okay, that was great. I'll add a couple more things, Matt. So whenever I'm thinking about a case study for a video, the three things I want to make sure that I understand from the customers, the client's perspective, who I'm going to be doing the case study or testimonial with, what were the stakes for when they decided to go with it, when they were looking for a change? Like, what was at stake for them as a person, as a company? What was the tension that was happening, the thing that was causing them to seek a solution in the first place? So really the order is tension, stakes, and then impact. So once they had the solution, what was the impact that they realized 3, 4, 5, 6 months down the road? Sometimes that can be quantifiable, like our productivity increased 25%. We reduced sick days by 35% with our production workers over that period, whatever it can be. Or sometimes it'll be like a qualifiable impact, like we noticed an enormous uptick in morale, or we're able to, we're working much better as a team as a result. It can be something that's not necessarily quantifiable. It can be a quality, and that's also a perfectly acceptable outcome. In terms of how to shoot them, I don't have anything really to add much from what Nick said. I agree doing the interview style is the way to go. One thing I'll add from Nick is, you do have an outline. You do kind of have a few questions you want to ask. Make sure you repeat the question a couple times, get a few different takes. Sometimes people it's just like when you do customer interviews, honestly, and, you ask them a question and they kind of meander on. Just rephrase the question, ask it again. People sometimes just appreciate the mulligan, the chance to be more succinct, to kind of say what they meant to say, and they didn't quite get it out. They didn't get it right the first time. So, don't go there thinking you're going to just ask the question once and then get that first take. Ask it 2, 3, 4 times, because they're going to kind of give you a different spin on it if you allow them to. And sometimes they'll just, without even telling you, they'll appreciate the chance to restate what happened. You can tell them ahead of time that you're going to do that, just to give them a few different chances to answer the question. But overall, that's a way to make sure you get a few different takes to use and stitch together if you want to. Agree with the interview style format. It's kind of like 60 minutes almost. When you think about how people interview people in 60 minutes, almost think of it like that style. And then when you think about removing the interviewer, could you stitch that whole thing together into a news piece? You probably could if you wanted to. And maybe it's not going to be 20 minutes. Maybe it's going to be 3 or 4, but you absolutely could do that. And then a couple of things, when I did it in-house at Binzel, we always had 2 cameras. So we had one that was face-to-face, one that was a side view for the person we were interviewing. So we could transition a couple of times, along with the B-roll that we would eventually get on the floor. We would typically try to get a shot of the person walking through it, or dealing with the product, or, talking with someone on their team. We would try to create a scenario where they were actually working with it. And we did that with, we were featuring people on our sales team, or we were doing it when we were doing a testimonial. But it's just good to kind of give setting a little bit. In terms of your other obstacle, you were talking about getting NDAs and getting permission to go on site. There's a couple things that I was able to do that was able to entice people to allow us to come on site. one thing we just flat out offered was like, we'd stay extra to film on site and do B-roll for them and let them have it. And say, hey, you can have all the B-roll that we filmed here and you can stitch together your own corporate video if you like. Because honestly, for a lot of companies, they're not going to spring to get a videographer to come do it. And if you have a videographer on site, or if you're hiring someone, you can just be like, hey, well, you'll get like, a videographer like this is $10,000. You can take this, get $10,000 worth of B-roll, and then go repurpose it for your own corporate purposes if you like. We're more than willing to share that. It's valuable for you. It'll be professional grade camera equipment and film quality, and then you can go hire a freelancer to stitch it together for you. So that's something that I have done with fairly large manufacturing companies in order to get in the door, and they were perfectly happy with that arrangement.
Something else, Matt, that you touched on with those questions. One thing that I like to make sure to do is if you ask them the same question 3 times back to back, you start to shake people's confidence. And this is just something I've noticed after doing this for 10 years. If there's one where you didn't get the answer, maybe say, hey, I'm going to try this, word this a different way, see if we get a different response. Make it feel like you're working with them so that they don't feel like that they're not delivering. Because when you have a camera and a light pointed on, people's psyches start to fall apart pretty quick. And the other thing is, if you don't get it on that second try, one thing I like to do, come back to it at the end. A lot of times people are more comfortable at the end. They're used to it. There's usually, okay, is there anything else you want to talk about? Actually, yeah, answer this question for me one more time now that you're warmed up. And the other big piece of that puzzle is do not send your questions ahead of time, especially when you're dealing with non-camera talent people. Give them an idea of what you're talking about. For instance, if you're going to talk about the results that your company has gotten for their company, let them know, hey, we're going to be talking about this. So if you could, check some numbers so you have some off the top of your head, that's helpful. But if you send their questions, and we've dealt with this a couple times now, if you send your questions in advance, they will try to memorize it, they will rehearse it in the mirror, and then they will beat themselves up on camera for not getting it as perfectly as they did last night in their bathroom, So I'll just save you a headache there and say, don't do that.
That's great. Thank you.
We actually had another question on those lines from Tyler. Tyler asked about just like helping staff get warmed up and comfortable being on camera. So tip number 1, don't send them the interview questions, just give them some context of what you want to talk about. Do y'all have any other tips that you would share as far as helping folks get warmed up, comfortable?
Tyler, do you want to come on and are you having this issue?
Tyler, gotta scroll back up here. Cross note. He's muted right now, so.
Okay. So if you hear us, Tyler, and you want to come on and talk about it more in depth, definitely welcome to. But let me tackle the question as it was presented in the chat. So getting the staff warmed up to get them comfortable being on camera. Like, I'm assuming you're talking about your in-house staff, like your colleagues at this point in time. So I've had this happen where I had a guy who was he was ready-made to be on camera. He was like clean cut, chiseled guy, like talked great, personally at trade shows. I was like, this guy's going to kill it on camera. It's going to be great. I put him in front of a camera to do a product overview video, and the guy could not have stuttered or looked at his notes or lost his words more. Like my camera guy literally walked out and said, "We got to just do this tomorrow." Like it was that bad. And this poor guy, he's from Canada, so I couldn't just bring him back from Canada to film a product overview video. It was brutal, and so we decided we were never going to have that happen again. And so we always had a fallback option when this happened. And so the fallback option that we would do is we would simply just do like an interview, kind of similar to what Nick said, but I would just sit there. I would be kind of neutrally dressed usually. And I would sit there and just lob questions to him on camera and have him kind of just talk to me individually, where I would basically be like, hey, tell me how this product works. Do you mind like letting me know? Kind of like how Tony Gunn does it for what is it? MTDCNC. That channel on YouTube and on LinkedIn. But basically, like, I would just step in and just talk to him. It would be more like a conversation between two people, and then we would just do some creative camera work in order to make sure that he was making eye contact with the camera, and then we were also getting our B-roll shots at the end. And it's not an ideal situation when that happens, but When the person can't because it's lonely to be in front of the camera by yourself. As someone who has shot multiple videos in my life for companies where I've talked about things I was not a subject matter expert in, but I studied up to do it. I know it is freaking lonely up there to go talk about a product or a product group. And, when you start to screw up, if you don't have the resolve to push yourself through it and laugh off your mistakes, which trust me, I've made hundreds of them on camera, then you're gonna just sort of you're gonna crumble under that sort of weight. And so, make it easier on your team by having options in place. So you can, okay, this isn't working. We're just going to step in and we're going to do this kind of like a conversational style, and we'll get the same content out. Okay. Maybe it won't be presented the way we initially had in mind, but the point will come across. We'll be creative with the B-roll, and we'll make sure that it looks good. And we've done that multiple times with my product manager at Binzel and with one of my sales guys at Binzel, and it worked out just fine in the end.
You want to add something real quick to kind of the conversation we've been having? Is what is our role as an in-house marketer if we are using a videographer? I think kind of what Nick and Matt are saying is essentially we should be the production assistant. Whatever bad thing is going to happen, we should over prepare for that. But the person you're interviewing, they just need to show up. They just need to say what they know, share their expertise. That's it. That's why we don't want them to rehearse. We don't want them to do anything. We should anticipate, if they're going to stumble on something, do we have the answer so we can feed it to them? Oh yeah, that's right, I can talk about that. I think that's kind of what our role should be. And doing many different shoots, as Nick and you and I have done, is you do not know what's going to happen once you turn the camera on. That's the only fact. It's inevitable. So if you can kind of over prepare yourself, you can protect your SME in that way and make sure that they look good.
Yeah, the thing I was telling a lot of people whenever I first started at Gorilla a year and a half ago, and I mean, every time I work with somebody else on here, it's something's going to go wrong. That's a guarantee. Something will go wrong. It's fine. We'll fix it when it happens. And sometimes it's the person not being able to speak. I think one of the things that I've started doing is spend a few questions, not going off of your notes, just general topic questions, and make it a point to give them eye contact and give them affirmation, quiet affirmation, to let them know that I am listening and I am totally right here with you, and we are working on this together. And anything I can do to put them at ease. Start out with a softball question, because you're going to have to get audio levels anyway. What'd you have for breakfast is one that is the industry standard. But then, yeah, ask them a few questions just to get them a little more comfortable with it, and remind them that hey, you're going to say, I'm going to ask you the same question multiple times. It doesn't mean you're messing up. It means I need something specific for my edit. So don't get in your head about it. That's helpful. And reminding them that this is going to be edited. It doesn't have to be perfect. If we need to fix something, we'll go back and fix it. But no one's going to die. Everybody that loved you when you woke up this morning is going to love you when you go to sleep. There's nothing at stake here right now. Just answer these questions as honestly as you can.
Love it.
So,
go ahead, Peyton.
Oh, I was just going to say one thing we didn't mention, just to kind of go back a little bit, tips for capturing video testimonials. I want to know, because we were talking about with the videographer and everything, but Zoom is also a way to do it, right? I just wanted to hear y'all's take on maybe a lower budget way to capture testimonials and how we've done that for clients here at Gorilla.
Definitely. Using Zoom,
Sorry.
using our phone. That's kind of the question, right, Peyton?
Yeah, just lower budget ways.
Definitely. So, Brendan, maybe you want to jump on this too, but there may be a point where you use your phone to do this, and trust me, you can get it done. Now, there are certain ways to use your phone, and Nick, that's where I want you to kind of jump in. But an idea, Nick, I also want you to talk about is what you pay for is what you get. So what's the cost-effective way to do this, but also what's the threshold for when I should bring you in?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, what you pay for is what you're going to get. If you're starting out and you want to use your phone, look for a microphone for your phone and listen to samples. If you're vetting something on Amazon, a lot of times people will record demos and put them up there so you can hear what it sounds like. well, me and a film buddy always joke that audio is the filmmaker's curse because it's the thing none of us think about, and it's arguably more important. Because if you think about it, if you've ever watched a video, let's say any video online, if it looks beautiful, but you can't understand anything that's happening as far as the audio is concerned, you will not watch that. But you will watch pixelated footage from 1998 that sounds good. You know, it's like, it's important. So if you're going to spend money anywhere, put it on a microphone if you're doing it the budget way. But yeah, I'd say as soon as you can, if it's an important thing, if it really matters a lot, if you really want a lot of people to see it, think about budget and see if you can bring in a professional to help you out with it.
Great. Awesome.
I think another idea like that, Peyton, we can do this or answer other questions, but Nick and I had some film school stuff we'd share.
Yeah, please do. I think folks are, there's an argument going on in the chat right now between Mary and Brendan about whether you want to hold the phone horizontal or vertical. And obviously, depending on location, right? So this goes back to goal. You know, what's the purpose of the video? Where do you want it to even be seen? I know we want to talk about that too, but yeah, what other production tips do y'all have from share your film school chops, your film chops with us?
So these are the two film topics I'll bring up that if you just look up Film 101, you'll see them, which is the rule of thirds and mise en scene. So let's start with the rule of thirds. Most SLR cameras will do this for you today, but if you can imagine our video and you split it in thirds vertically, horizontally, there's some natural points where your eyes draw to. So that's where you want to put your subject in the camera. Or if you want to get artsy, maybe you want to put them off that to make them feel a different way. But essentially, I think almost all I think maybe your phone, you can download something on there too when you take video and photos. But that's just going to help you figure out where you should actually put your subject and make sure it looks correctly. The second is kind of along this idea too. Mise en scene is every time you put the camera up, you should look at the frame and see what's in it. I have a calendar behind me, right? That's intentional. You know, people know I'm punctual. There you go. I think that's the idea. Like, again, once you have that camera up, like if you're shooting in a shop, what's in there? Sometimes I actually don't like when everyone cleans it up. I'm like, get your tools out, get the stuff that you use every day. I want people to feel like they're in there actually working. That's kind of what we mean in mise en scene is like, what's actually in the frame? Why is it purposefully there? Should you move something or should you not? Nick, you got any thoughts on that?
No, I think it's helpful. It depends on what it is, but yeah, I think those are two things to pay attention to. You know, if you're in an office, clean it up because people want to know that you're tidy and that you're organized. And if you're in a workshop, I mean, have a hammer land in the background because it lets me know you're doing some work. No, and as far as the horizontal versus vertical, I mean, I'm a total snob. Don't put it vertical ever. Like, I don't want to see that. I think it looks bad.
Not even for TikTok videos, Nick?
I mean, that's the thing. It's TikTok. It's also probably why I'm not on TikTok, you know? Like seeing, especially watching like a news story and you see the vertical thing and then everybody complains about, I hate how they do the blurry thing on the side. It's like, well, if you put your phone sideways, we wouldn't have to, but that's the only choice we had. That's my snobbery coming out though. I mean, for wherever you want to go, we've done social media posts in like previous jobs where, yeah, you do one-to-one because there is something where it takes up more of your phone screen if you're in that orientation, if they're scrolling through on like Instagram or something like that. Just kind of depends on where. I think that is completely contingent on where you're going. What's your goal? Where is this getting consumed? Are you putting this on Vimeo to embed it on your website's homepage? Let's do horizontal. Are you putting this on TikTok? Okay, maybe you should do vertical.
Brendan,
But
you got a
also, if you want
rebuttal?
it to look better, put it horizontal.
So Brendan, you want to share your experience filming at Graco?
Yeah. So when I was at Graco, one of the things I would really want to do was get some video out there because I thought, video is the best way for me to show off what my pumps do. Like I can't bring people into Graco all the time, but I can distribute video to them. And so I was trying to do demos on like my pumps pumping fruit cocktail or chicken feet or any other weird stuff I wanted to pump. And so I would just go back to our labs. And I had a nice camera. I had a Canon EOS Rebel. And then I also had my Google Pixel phone. And a lot of times I just ended up using my phone because I can get in there really quick. The lighting, like I thought I was able to capture better lighting on my phone without futzing around with adjustments on my camera because I didn't know how to do that. So I would just go in there with my phone and, take a nice vertical video because I knew what the goal was, right? Like I wanted to put it up on LinkedIn and was a big thing. And then also, distribute on YouTube. But so I thought vertical was a better thing for me in that instance, but I did take some horizontal too. So Nick, I did do that, but you could do that with your phone as well. So it depends on what your goal is, right? But yeah, I would just get in there and I don't know, like a 30-second video of my pumping stuff. I put a little rock music behind it and a couple of graphics on, and there you go. You got a nice little video showing what your product can do. So yeah, I think it's just always go back to like, what's the purpose of the video? And then, start planning from there.
I think that's a very interesting point you said about using your phone versus the Canon DSLR that you had, because everybody here is probably aware that a DSLR takes a better, captures a better image. But if you don't know what you're doing with it, then you're just using an advanced tool. I mean, that you don't know how to use, which is going to be less effective than what you want. Because the reality is that the auto exposure of a cell phone gets things looking nice, which is all we really need in these moments. It's that it goes back to that, they're not wanting to see the super polished version. And if you'd have tried to have made it, if you spent your entire work week trying to make that one video look really polished, you'd look like a guy who spent a lot of time focusing on the wrong part of what you were doing. So just give the information that you need to give. And when you want it to look good, hire the person that knows how to use that camera because they'll make it look really good for you.
And I think like the nice thing with the phone to me too is like there's a level of authenticity that comes across very well with just a rough and dirty phone edit. Like there's a time and place for having a nice polish, like when you're like trying to do a nice commercial or a TV ad or even like YouTube pre-roll and stuff. But like if you're just doing like a quick organic post, like just put that phone up and take a video. It's the same thing with TikTok. Like why is TikTok so popular? It's because it's just authentic people on camera without having crazy editing skills. So that's my take on it.
Agreed.
Said another question coming in the chat from Kenneth. Kenneth, if you want to join us here and unmute, you're welcome to give us some more context to your question. Thoughts on ideal length and possibly front loading with the important details, let's say specifically for a case study video.
Let's take that one.
I'm gonna keep it short. I think is the best. Yeah. Keep it brief because the reality is a lot of times you're convincing people to care. You're not guaranteed any of their attention. There is an obnoxious thing. I mean, you see the movie trailers on YouTube now, the trailer before the trailer, which some people love, some people hate, but they're there for a reason. I'm not saying do that. I think that's a bad idea because it feels like you're trying to influence people specifically. And I think a lot of times it's not necessarily the feeling we want to give people, that we're trying to manipulate them. We know that with trailers, so it's kind of more accepted. But yeah, I would say keep it brief and give the important information first contextually for the story. I mean, that doesn't mean spoiling the ending, but so much set up the problem. I mean, there's a little bit of a story that you're telling. So give them the important information for the story. And I think the strongest thing you can do is get to it. Like, don't drag it out. Don't pretend like it's a more dramatic thing or, don't give them time to get bored. Just continually give them information until they've got everything you want them to know. But some people just won't watch, and that's part of it. I mean, it's a numbers game. We've all had days where we're watching everything that you scroll by, and we've had days where you're just not looking at anything because you're bored for an external reason.
Yeah, I was going to add, just like with copywriting, if you can say more with less, great. Video's the same way, show more with less. Again, our attention spans are just so short. Maybe they'll get better in the next couple of years. I doubt it. But I think kind of what Nick's saying is like, get the subject in there as quick as possible, but don't feel like you have to give it to them like immediately. It's part of the storytelling, right? Give them a reason to get to the end. And I think that's kind of, as you do more video, you're just going to get better at that organically.
So we're getting towards the end of the hour here. So I want to kind of curve this around to, okay, we've got a video. I know we're jumping some steps, so if anyone has questions, please interrupt me and jump in with your questions. But now you've got your video, we're in post-production. Now what? Like, how are we going to maximize this very expensive, if we did hire a videographer, you know, piece of content, or this like little fiery product video like what Brendan put together?
Yeah, I'll give you the strategy perspective and Nick jump in. Is once you have a video complete, distribute it, get it out there. I think with post-production is you can touch it up as all you want, but essentially it's got to reach your audience. So from a strategic perspective, I think just get the video in front of the right people at the right time, and spend less time kind of touching up the maybe color grading or throwing in title cards. It helps. It certainly helps, but I think speed is definitely a marketing lever you can pull. Nick, you got some thoughts?
I would actually lean more on you guys on this part. I mean, if we're talking about, if you're spending money on it, I think you could expect to spend money on the edit as well, because that's really where you can spend a lot of time shooting a lot of pretty stuff. You need the time to put the piece together, and you need somebody who knows what they're doing there. I think that's just as important. But as far as like it actually being complete and what you're going to do with it then, that I don't know. I've spent a lot of time making a lot of things that some of them, they get a lot of views, and it's because there's a marketer, you know, putting it into a campaign. And then there's stuff that I've made that I'm probably even more proud that doesn't really get a lot of views because it's all organic on YouTube or Vimeo. So yeah, I'll let you strategists field that one.
Yeah, Matt, you want to jump in?
Yeah, this goes back to all content in general, which is like, what's your distribution strategy, or how do you plan to distribute your content? And when you have video, you know, you have more options because you have YouTube available to you. You have social media platforms as well. You can cut it up and send it on. But you know, if you're gonna make video content, to me, the best way to utilize that is one-to-one and one-to-many. So, you know, get your sales team educated on certain videos that fit well in a sales context and a consultative sales context, and say, hey, at that point, you're doing sales enablement, right? And it's like, hey, you know, when someone fills this out and you have them on a call, like, this is going to be the best thing to send them at this given time, and send it to them and see what they think. So some of it depends on the type of video you make, but you know, there's a lot of different uses for it. So sales enablement is definitely one, making sure your sales team knows what videos you have and when's the right time to use it. I had to do a ton of coaching on that with my sales team, because most salespeople look at video and they just literally shotgun blast it to everybody. I had a guy one time where every time we got like a lead in and he did his follow-up, he literally would follow back up with them and send them 12 video links on YouTube. And I'm like, dude, you just got fished by Godalnet. Like, come on, man. Like you can't possibly send those many videos. Like, have some patience and respect for the buyer's journey a little bit here. So you have to coach your team on how to use video. Second thing, obviously, is YouTube. And so, you know, putting if you have like a demo video or like a commercial style kind of video where you could cut it up into like a smaller 30, 60-second clip. YouTube pre-roll is a great way to do this. It's very cost effective. You're talking 3 to 7 cents a view. You can keep the targeting really tight based off keywords, and then you can further segment by demographics like manufacturing, which is its own demographic that you can layer on top of in YouTube. And then also, you know, LinkedIn, you can use it. A really good video on LinkedIn, you can send it to your entire total addressable market, build a retarget list off of it, and then give them additional content. So think about when you make videos like this, you can do a whole lot of things to help build retargeting lists for yourself, to help your sales team utilize it. But honestly, like when you're making a video piece, have a plan for it, because there's a lot of resources and time that go into it, and just making it for the sake of making isn't a good enough reason to make it.
And to jump onto that, because I think that's a really good point, is if you want to cut it up and you want to make a 30-second version of this piece into a YouTube pre-roll ad, consider that up front. And you know, it's one thing if you're doing it yourself or if you have an in-house videographer, but if you're hiring someone, that 30-second piece that pops out is another deliverable, and it's something else to make sure you communicate to them up front. That way there's no confusion after the fact, or you don't get sticker shock if they charge you for another deliverable. Sometimes if you've got it all planned out, you can figure out that pricing and nobody's surprised after the fact. The other piece that I would say that's very important with that is remember again what your goal is, which is that main piece. Don't try to make decisions when you're filming your main piece that will benefit your YouTube pre-roll ad. You know, if you have an idea for a shot that you think would be good to get in addition to, cool, but don't sacrifice what you're doing for your main piece for the little breakout piece of content that's going to happen, or if you're going to, you know, turn it into a short clip on social media, because you'll water down your main message and make that less effective. And you can chop anything into something for LinkedIn. Like if you're just doing a little breakout, you can always do that with a piece, but stick to your goal.
Awesome. So, okay, everyone's yelling in the chat. We want to hear about tools. We want to hear, we're manufacturers. We have to film in shops. It's so loud. That's probably why Brendan has a bunch of rock music behind his clip. But any tips on just like getting started tool wise?
And I think Roz was going to come on and kind of talk about her specific applications. So I think that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, that'd be great. Roz, come on.
Hey, hi, geniuses. You guys are awesome. Oh my gosh, you guys have the world ahead of you. I've been in manufacturing sector going on about 40 years. And I've been business development, I've run machines, I've played around in quality. So I've had a lot of fun and really had an opportunity to play in every role. The happiest role I've ever played in, because side note, I'm a painter, artist type, was when this whole video thing came out. And I mean, I remember I was using my cell phone and I would get a friend's shop and they'd say, Roz, we're really slow on work. And boy, I had a big LinkedIn account. So I'd go out there with my dumb little cell phone and I'd go, let me get some pictures. And I'd interview somebody, you know, complete novice. And I'd edit it together in my little iMovie app, right, over the weekend. And I'd post it on LinkedIn. And damn it, if these guys wouldn't get a bunch of business, you know, from this post, that people would see this machine shop with these open spindles, yada, yada. So now I'm working in this missile company. We make missiles, beryllium, very unique market. Matt, you mentioned Tony Gunn. He actually came out here and did 3 videos on us. And I feel very blessed because he didn't charge us. So that means we're a really unique company, right? With the components we make. So Tony is amazing. He's the best one-man band I have ever had the pleasure of meeting. And man, he's a whip because he gets it, asks you 5 questions, and you're on the shop floor doing a 60 minutes interview, you know? So he's brilliant. So anyways, my question is, because now that I've made some of these videos professionally, I'm getting people calling me like, hey, where'd you get that video made? And I'm like, well, my son's now employed. Guess what? So yeah, guys. So my son was an inspector. He got laid off during COVID. Mom was making these videos because we couldn't get source inspectors out during COVID. So I'm kind of happy about COVID a little bit because it opened up this whole new genre business side hustle for me. So now I'm making these videos and they're brilliant. They're great. I'm loving it. I'm now making training videos, right? Like how to run a machine. I want to make GD&T videos, like how to read a blueprint really, and, you know, and all this kind of fun stuff. So the only trouble I'm running into now that we're you know, getting customers at machine shops is the sound equipment. And I'm just not, you know, the B-roll, by the way, and that 2 camera thing, life savers. You know, you got to have the 2 cameras because, wow, in the edit, you can just make magic happen so long as you're tooled up right. And if you find a good colorist, you know, because your lighting wasn't quite right, maybe.
That's such a good call.
Sound. I can't get over the sound issues. So any suggestions on that for those noisy machine shops? What do you experts have to share with me? And thanks for letting me chat.
We were talking about this before because we were discussing whether or not how far we'd go into gear and what questions people would have. And I told everybody, you know, I've been the one-man band in a, you know, loud environment, running audio, and that machine kicks on and the generator goes and I don't know what to do. And I've been the guy on a set with a audio recorder, like professional audio guy, and the generator kicks on and he looks at me and goes, I don't know what you want me to do. because the sound is the sound. Now, with that being said, you can get in an environment like that, I would strongly recommend a lavalier mic. Those are those ones that pin onto your shirt. You see people on the news wearing them all the time. But this is versus the camera or the microphone that mounts on top of your camera. That's what they call a shotgun mic. It picks up the sound. It sounds like what it sounds like to be that camera. You know, it's very much from that direction. Lavalier, you pin it. I like putting it at about this part of the shirt. This gives you all the bass tones of somebody's voice, and it's very close to where their natural speaking pattern is going to fall. That being said, you're still going to hear that other environment. The only way to get rid of that is to literally get rid of that sound, shut that equipment off. And sometimes you can't do that. So another alternative that you could do that I like doing is go in and film it and maybe have a lav on somebody or somebody standing next to the camera so they can talk you through what it is that you're seeing. Like, let's say we're demoing this piece of machinery. Have the guy on the floor explain to you what is happening and let it sound terrible as long as you can hear it, as long as you can understand it after the fact. And then go back, cut it together, and then maybe grab the same person and say, hey, can you repeat these lines for me? And then we'll put it in and we'll capture it cleanly. And that way, nobody's complaining about the audio quality of your video. Both are totally viable, but that secondary fix is going to be more time consuming. But if you've got the time to do it, it'd be worth doing.
So much more we could talk about today. And I know that we definitely want to make sure that we're answering all of your questions. I think we've maybe even inspired a future IML session. Want to drop one more little note before we wrap up. Like, we want to keep these conversations going in between. So we are going to kick off the Slack group. We're going to send out invitations to the group that's here first. If you want to be invited to the Slack group, again, just send your little exclamation point in the chat. I've already got Jay, Katie, Michael, Allison, got your names down. So Tyler, awesome. So we will get you added. Craig, woo, you better bring your earplugs. Okay, so thank you so much for joining us today. We're excited to see you guys later this month and in the Slack group later this week. So Roz, thanks so much for a great question and for helping us close out. We're excited to see you guys all again very soon.